Hello, English 1102. I will review today the Areas of Significance lesson. I was planning to do this in class, but due to the snow day, I will record what I would have done in class. So we will talk today, be about 12 minutes or so, about areas of significance, and basically that's, hey, what makes a place significant and worth preserving? What is so special and unique about your place? And that's there are many different ways to look at that, and you'll have more than one, so keep that in mind. It's not just one area of significance. The key word is areas. So when you write your paper, your final paper, you will discuss anywhere from probably 2 to 4 areas of significance in your research paper. Okay, so the first one we want to look at is architectural. So buildings, think buildings and structures. Structures meaning bridges, dams. Hoover Dam would be an example, or the Golden Gate Bridge for a structure. But also, of course, it relates to buildings. So architects design buildings. They have all sorts of choices. And so the ones you will look at if you choose a building or structure should be very unique and significant from a design standpoint. So you want to think about how the building was designed. Why was it designed that way? Your research should tell you that. What's unique about its design. In the construction, what kind of methods were used? What about the construction is important? Like what sort of methods did they use? If you look at the Hoover Dam, they did something that had not been accomplished before. It also was very dangerous. Many construction workers, many workers lost their lives in the construction of the Hoover Dam. So that would be part of the construction significance. And then how long did it take to build, and what cost, just the basic history of it as well, from a number standpoint and time cost. Engineering, so if you're an engineering student, you want to look at, you might like looking at how unique is the engineering. Is it really an engineering marvel like the Golden Gate Bridge? It should be. If you choose a structure that's not a building, it needs to be very significant like the Golden Gate Bridge, Hoover Dam, so forth. Keep that in mind, but you'll explore these areas if you select a place that fits this. Now, I want to remind you again as we continue here, if you choose, a natural place like the Grand Canyon, okay, or Rocky Mountain National Park, or the Great Smoky Mountains Region National Park, this does not apply to you. So not all of these slides will apply to your place. So keep that in mind. This is only if you select a building or structure. And vice versa, if you're selecting a building or structure, when we get to the natural significance in a minute here, that will not apply to yours, okay? Historical. This applies to all places. So how did the place contribute to local, state, regional, global history? How has it impacted local areas? Has it changed over time? Of course it has, but how has it compare today to what it was when it was first found? And many national parks have expanded their acreage, their footprint over time, so you'd want to look at that. So compared to, say, when the if you look at Yellowstone, you were right about Yellowstone. When was Yellowstone established and how large was it? And then compare that to today and compare some of the history of it from the early stages until today. Is it an integral part of our nation's history? I have an example here, the National Mall in D.C., where Martin Luther King gave his I Have a Dream speech, and many other social movements have taken place there, and many presidents have spoken there and so forth. So that would be an example. Does it tell a story about a people's struggle or a movement? Like Trail of Tears would be an example of a landscape, an actual trail. It starts in Georgia, actually, and goes to Oklahoma. So that Trail of Tears is land, but it's also about relocating Native Americans and what impact that had on them. So that would be an example for that sort of situation. So social movements, things like the Civil Rights Movement in our country, rights of Native Americans, indigenous people, other human rights movements, Jewish history, Holocaust sites in Germany, or you could look at maybe Anne Frank's house where she hid for so many years in Amsterdam. Women's rights movement, Seneca Falls comes to mind. Other places are out there. So there's a place. So you're not writing a paper on the women's rights movement or voting rights movement for women, or say civil rights movements. However, you're going to perhaps write about a place, it could be, that connects to the civil rights movement, okay, or connects to the women's rights movement. So you could write your paper on the Selma to Montgomery Trail, which led to voting rights reform and civil rights wins for African Americans. So that's a landscape from Selma to Montgomery, includes Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, but it goes all the way to Montgomery. It's a lot of land. It's a long trail, but it connects to the civil rights movement. So that is a social movement, but it's also a landscape. And so you see how there's overlap as you go through these. Cultural, that would be arts, music, literature, anything in that broad umbrella of culture. So in Paris, you got the Louvre, the Met. In New York, you also have Museum of Modern Art in New York. If you like music, places like Ryman and Nashville, Sun Studios, Memphis. There's also a cool place in Alabama, North Alabama, called Fame Studios. It's very historic recording studios that is still somewhat relatively unknown, but check that out if you like music. It's there's Fame Studios, and I think the other one that's also there is Muscle Shoals Sound Studio. Anyway, there are two in North Alabama and Muscle Shoals, Alabama. There have been documentaries on this, and anyway, it might be something cool if you like music. If you like literature, maybe you could look at Faulkner's home in Oxford, Mississippi. Or if you like Hemingway or literature, you could also look at Key West as a historic backdrop. Like, what was it about Key West that drew Hemingway there, and what are some historic and cultural features of Key West? Now, when I say Key West, I'm not talking about writing about the modern dance clubs and the kind of tourist traps. I'm talking about historic Key West, where Hemingway wrote, and other authors have traveled down there, and like really getting into the history of Key West and why it's been impactful for those that write, so like Hemingway. So religious, that would include any sort of religious institution, any religious structure, building, temple, church, synagogue, any religious site out there in the world. Many of those are significant, so there's a lot to choose from. I didn't list any here, but there's just so many around the world. You just need to make sure the one you choose is significant enough and has enough research to look at. And you'll find that out you'll know that when you do your annotated bib. You'll know within an hour or so of research that, okay, there's hardly any sources on this, so it's not significant. I do have my list of places to choose from, but you can not use that and choose your own. But if you choose your own, all the ones on my list are fine and have lots of research. But if you choose one that's not on the list, then you just need to make sure there's enough research, because you could be in trouble if there's just not enough research, and you'll know if it's not significant, and then at that point you need to change to something that is. So continuing with religious, though, others, some operate today as churches or churches and museums, temples. They're operating, still having religious services today. Others are more like museums that are just more or less tourist attractions. The Cathedral of Notre Dame is one you could do. That's on my list, I believe. That there was a fire a couple years ago, and it has recovered from the fire. So now it's been restored. So that might be interesting to kind of track history, but also a modern update with recovering from the fire. That's in Paris. Archaeological sites often have a religious connection. These are not buildings at all, but they're still places. And then ruins, religious ruins around the world that are significant enough where there have been perhaps, research and archaeological digs of the ruins. So these will all be in the category of religious significance. And I want to remind you again, all of these, any place you choose is going to have more than one area of significance. So don't think you're going to do, say, an architectural engineering analysis on the Hoover Dam or Golden Gate Bridge, and that's it, because you need to look at tourism, you need to look at economic impact, and we're going to look at that in a minute. So I'm saying that a lot because sometimes students think they have to choose one of these. No, I want you to do, your place will overlap with numerous, with 2, 3, 4 total areas of significance. So you're not just looking at one. Again, moving on, ecological natural places. So significance is truly in the land itself. Now, there may have been development on the land and made it a national park, but if you go to Rocky Mountains National Park, yeah, there's a visitor center and there's structures that house equipment, things like that. But the value of that place is the land, and not in the buildings there. And so, same thing with Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Same thing with the Chattahoochee River, if you want to look at that one. Lake Lanier would be one in Georgia that is a natural place, actually man-made lake, but a natural landscape nonetheless. This would include impact on conservation and wildlife. It includes the geology, like what are the unique geological features there? And then does this place have any rare, unique animal species or flowers, grasslands, trees, so forth that make it worth preserving? So if you like, if you're a advocate for the environment and, climate change is an issue that you care about and preserving our earth, and, this would be something to think about picking a national park or a landscape to do your project on, because really land conservation, and this is not my opinion, it's a fact, land conservation is a really impactful way to preserve the environment and help reverse global warming, because it protects it from man-made development when it's a national park or a conservation area, landscape that's protected some way. All right, economics. So about any place you choose is probably going to have some kind of economic impact, meaning tourism, and so that also makes it significant. And so, very simple. How does this place generate tourism? Maybe it doesn't at all. Maybe it's not allowed. So it might not be a fit for you. So some of yours may be off limits to tourists, and that's okay. Don't feel like you have to do this, but I think almost everyone that's been in my classes, there's been some connection to the economy. But again, yours may not have that, but most of you will. Cultural tourism is the term here often used. So you're not going to Six Flags, you're going to see some ancient religious site. That would be cultural tourism. Camping, hiking, recreation, what kind of opportunities are there for tourists at a national park or a landscape? And continuing on here, educational, is the site an outdoor classroom, so to speak? Can you go and learn on site there and gain understanding about the land and the wildlife there? Is there a goal of the site to educate visitors? So like zoos want you to be more interested in animal conservation. If you've ever been to a large zoo, there's usually some literature or signage about endangered species and so forth. So is that a part of your site? Does your site seek to make you aware of some cause? Is there a museum on site? If it is a museum, this is a really easy fit. You will have educational impact or educational significance. If it's an art museum, any kind of museum, this will be definitely one of your areas of significance. And that is it for right now. And if you have any questions, let me know. You can email me or come see me during my office hours Wednesday. Take care.